So how's the daily meditation going?
It could be worse.
Does that mean you're showing up?
I am showing up, but
No, but
it,
that's
it
enough.
could be better.
So,
It hasn't been I haven't showed up every day as I should, but the times that I have, it's been good. Yeah. I just need to be more consistent in doing it every day.
has anybody got some tips for how to make it consistent?
The same time and same place are helpful. Like, I mean, doing it the same time of day.
And if you don't have enough time, getting up earlier is helpful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, doing it in the morning, the same.
Yeah, that's the problem. I think this past week I was sleeping in a bit more. So I just need to wake up earlier.
I find that when not doing it in the morning, first time in the morning, it's really beneficial doing before going to bed at night. It helps the sleeping a lot.
And it's really nice if you do both. Just briefly. I mean, just to, whichever one you can do longer, then, take advantage of that. But because it really is about sort of correcting our minds for the day or for our sleep, it's about remembering what's important to us, and not just be caught up in whatever we're doing. Because if we're not in touch with our minds, then whatever we're doing is not going to be as meaningful. We won't remember it as well. We won't, we'll just, do our tick list of, our checklist and just mark things on done, 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 done. But we won't experience our lives as clearly, so being able to just remember that we check in with our mind, because the mind is everything. The mind is what experiences our life. Everything's dependent on the mind. If we're in, a crisis or in a terrible state of mind, really worried, it doesn't matter how beautiful a day it is, how many things go right, we don't even notice. It's because our mind's not able to, and so it's just, and the same is true when everything is glorious, you're infatuated and life is good and da 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 da. Then you might not notice that your child's very unhappy because your mind's just, wherever it wants to be, So we don't check in to remember what makes our lives meaningful. We may not even notice our lives much, or we just kind of go up and down depending on what's going right or whatever. But I mean, it's really about cherishing the aggregate that gives our life meaning. We tend to cherish our body. We don't want to lose it, which, makes sense. It's not like losing the phone or losing your keys, it's a little more vital than that. But, we just want to remember that it is really our mind that makes everything worthwhile or meaningless or whatever. I mean, it's just that it's the mind that determines those things, not the body. Because we can have a very good day and our body be a mess. It's really about the mind. Really old people spending the day with their grandchildren would hate it if they just thought about their bodies. They'd be exhausted, their ears would be ringing from the sound of children, I did the children's camp one weekend in North Carolina, and I swear my ears rang for a week. I just couldn't believe it. I'd forgotten entirely how loud that can be. But if I just focused on that, so we really need to remind ourselves that the mind is worth taking care of. So yes, we want to get 10 minutes more sleep, but is that going to serve us as well as waking up and doing 5 minutes of checking in with the mind and remembering what's important and not just jumping into the day and all the activities? Because it's a dependent arising. It's dependent, the state of our mind is dependent, on how we feed it. Just like the body, so to speak. Faye, did you have a question?
Oh, yeah, I was gonna say that I think this past week it was a bit harder to meditate. I think I was going through some, I guess, negative emotions like anger and whatnot. It was hard to meditate, so I had to
What does that mean to you?
Like I was angry at something.
Oh yeah, but what does it mean that I couldn't meditate?
I just couldn't focus. I couldn't. I don't know. I guess it wasn't calm up here. So
yeah, well, and meditation can lead you to calmness, but it's not the purpose of meditation. The purpose of meditation is to become familiar with whatever the object of meditation is. So if you're trying to become more aware of your mind, it doesn't matter what state of mind it's in. You're just trying to observe, be aware of what's there. So that it's just, it's like, so you don't wait for good conditions, good experiences, good all those things. It's about just showing up and seeing where it is. Because that's the only way to see the opportunity to change the mind, to uncover what's driving it. And then we can drop the story or, sit with the disturbing emotion, become tolerant of it. Does that make sense?
yeah.
So if we just want to show up when we're already calm, then, like a nap will do, it's just like, it's nice when the mind is calm and we want to discover the spaces between our thoughts because we have a calmness of mind all the time. We're just completely oblivious to it. So we want to develop. So becoming familiar with the mind is one of the tools that helps us get in touch with the space in the mind. But if we're just looking for calm, well, get a glass of lemonade and sit on the hammock. That's not particularly using the potential of the mind. And I'm not picking on you. We're all, oh, I can't meditate because, I'm too scattered. Well, it's not going to change if you don't practice. So it's just, anybody else have that issue?
I have, but, and I read a while ago, I think it was Tenzin Palmo. Tenzin Palmo actually wrote about instead of engaging your mind to kind of disconnect from it and just watch it like in my case, a white red river flowing by and I'm standing on the shore watching it. And then you can start to deal with it.
Yeah, it's a stepping back mentally. But what's going on? Hello in there. What's going on? So it's that's what we want to get familiar with, what's going on. Then we discover whether we have habits that are skillful or not skillful. And then we can choose to do something about it when we want to, you know. So it's a matter of finding ways to tolerate when it's not pleasant. You know, and that's where being consistent, you know, that you just do it at the same time every day, da 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 da. So just like you don't walk out of the house without brushing your teeth, you know, you don't skip your meditation.
I find
Now,
that
obviously, if you oversleep and you're going to miss your appointment, you know, then you miss it. But that's why you try to, commitment is helpful, not joyous commitment. You know, for some people, I have friends who, you know, they've obviously practiced in several lives, and it's just what they love to do. But we have to, you know, if you love to meditate, you got to check to see what you're becoming familiar with. Because the purpose of meditation is to become familiar with your mind. And surely your mind is not always, if you're not a Buddha, not a Bodhisattva, you know, sometimes your mind's a mess. So meditation's not always going to be pleasant. Or if you're dealing with, you know, like if you're really trying to, you know, get your habit, energy of jealousy under some sort of manageable level, or in other words, trying to figure out how to abandon it because it's almost never manageable. You know, it's not pleasant to think about jealousy. It's not pleasant to let it arise in the mind and then look at it for what it is.
so like what I do is usually in the past is I would like journal and then maybe I can meditate. So
Try it out.
that's what I try and do so that it's a bit easier during meditation.
And just remember, though, what you want to learn how to do is settle your mind so that you can then focus on becoming familiar with the mind. So it's really about, but we don't have to calm our mind down to, or we don't have to settle the mind down to a state of calm. Because most days we're not going to get there. It's so funny because, you know, I keep y'all all out here in gallery and y'all move around. You know, the picture, you know, you don't stay in the same place. And so I get really like distracted. Sorry about my, you know, inability. I mean, you know, I try to focus on the whole kind of thing and then it moves. It's like, oh, okay, why? Distraction.
Impermanence.
Yeah, totally. So maybe it just thinks, you know, we'll fall asleep if we, you know, if it doesn't occasionally, you know, change.
I
So,
think it's good when people unmute, then it moves us. Or if we
okay.
pitch,
It's encouraging us to take turns.
Yeah, and it's also if you go from having your picture to then not,
Oh, yeah.
because it keeps the pictures at the higher level. I think that's why it does it.
Yeah. Depends on your settings. Anyway, so another thing that can help with developing consistency is having a plan. You know, so you might say, for the next 4 weeks, I'm just going to concentrate on developing the discipline of showing up, following my breath, trying to really keep my focus on the breath, using the strategies that are recommended if you get, you know, when you grasp after something in the mind, you know, and then you might say, okay, then the next month, I'm going to start looking at attachment, or I'm going to start looking at my impatience, or I'm going to start looking at my whatever, you know, name a state of mind, you know. Because if you don't have a plan, you know, if you take Discovering Buddhism, then you have some meditations being recommended. so you've got something to work with. As I've said many times, they're generally too long, but so you kind of shrink them, which means you've looked at it, you've become familiar with it, you've kind of gone, oh, that, if I say that to myself, I'll start laughing. There are, some of these meditations are written by people from England, from Australia, from, Europe, France, places, so that sometimes their vocabulary just strikes you as kind of like, I'm sorry, I would never say that in a billion years. So you have to reword it so that it feels comfortable, feels natural. And then if you read something and you think, oh, I don't think so, then that's an excellent place to bring to meditation, to reflect on that. Get some clarity on the meaning. And if you can't get clarity on the meaning, that means you have a question about it. So you have, you write that down. Does that make sense? If there's a problem that's arising in your life, or that there's something you notice that is repeatedly a problem, like you always have trouble when, you have a meeting with so-and-so, or you always have trouble when you ask your child to do a particular chore, things like that. Then you can look at it, you can take that to meditation and kind of, think about the setting, what's going on, who else is there, what seems to arise in the body, what arises in the mind, what kind of words you say, how do you feel afterwards? And you can start to examine, is there something about your, what's going on that you can easily identify as, creating some discomfort, and then you can get in touch with, what needs some work. Maybe it's the way we talk to each other. Maybe it's because we're really attached to a certain outcome. So we're not really interested in a discussion, even if our words act as if we're interested in a discussion. We've already decided. So we want to be able to investigate what's going on. Oh, I really have some self-interest here. I really want this to happen. I want them to say this. And then you can go, well, is that realistic? Did they sign a contract to where they agree to say what you want them to say? So we can look at the ways in which we're holding something and how that manifests in the body and the mind. We can see the stressors, the clinging. The teachings compare attachment to spilling oil on a cloth and then trying to get the oil out of the cloth. If any of you do laundry, you know how hard it is to get grease or olive oil out of fabric. It just clings. It not only clings, it can seep in and spread. That's what attachment is like. It's very hard to stop it once it's arisen. Yes, Robert.
Yeah, hi. This week has not been the greatest for the formal, I guess, meditation, but the awareness is definitely all you guys say about all the teachings for the last month or two. So it's in my head now, for instance, the habit energy, that's strong. Habit energy is strong. So when I say formally sat down, but I found myself watching in amazement my thoughts all day, like this is something else, but this is I think Don, his name is, said about the river. I was I thought there was a leaky faucet, and I open the door and there's a a white water river here. I'm like, how am I gonna stop this? You know, I mean, it's so I'm familiar. You know, maybe not, I haven't sat down formally, but I'm just amazed that it's like this is something else. This is, and fortunately also, Veronica, throughout the day, just say, how's your mind? Like, how you doing? You know, so, and that helps too, because you're like, oh boy, this is something else. So I guess my point is, you know, it hasn't so much been formal sit down, but yeah, being aware and just thinking, okay, then you got to take energy steps to change it. But I'm at the point, I'm just like amazed, like, wow, this is something else, like really something else. That's it. Yeah.
That's a great beginning, you know, because that we really want to be aware all day long. And at first, like you're saying, it's sort of like, whoa, who knew I could have so much in my head all the time and so rapidly, you know. It is the whitewater, you know, river, whitewater river, whatever, the rapids, you know. So it's, and that might not change a lot if you're a very busy person, you know. But what can change is eventually, with practice, is the amount of thoughts that have no use at all being there. You know, I mean, you have enough to do already, and you're thinking about some, you know, just who knows, you know, some silly conversation you're having in your head. I mean, I do it all the time because I like to know how things work, and so I'll just start thinking, oh, I wonder how they figured that out. And it's a total waste of my energy. You know, it's like, I'm not going to know everything. And when I don't know it and I'm not going to Google it, I just make it up. So that's not useful. So you know, it's about really noticing. And then if you realize, geez, I always have the habit of thinking nothing but terrible thoughts when I'm going to have to spend time with so-and-so. That's so destructive to our well-being. And then it means that that relationship with so-and-so cannot change because we won't let it. We have no space for change. So sometimes we have to interrupt our habits in order to be able to see what's possible.
But how would you interrupt your like, okay, habit, say meeting someone you don't care to meet, but I mean, the habit, I mean, as Jackie, I guess, says about her father, like I have a PhD 5 times over in negative. It's just amazing. Like, such a waste of time, such a waste. I know that, I'm verbalizing that.
You take that to formal meditation.
Drat. No, I don't mind. It's just, I feel like I'm doing it all day. Like, just thinking, like, this is, I'm watching.
Yeah, and so you notice the ones that you have a PhD in that might not be skillful. And then you sit down and you think about that. Think about, why would this be an advantage? What's the disadvantages of having that habit of mind? You build a reasoning and a motivation to interrupt that habit and change it. You have to want it, you know? So you have to value your relationship with the person, and it may be value your relationship with yourself. You know, it's kind of hard to have self-respect. Like, I'm a big complainer. You know, you know, it's like, I have a PhD in complaining. And, you know, and I don't like myself for being a complainer. If I get off the phone with someone, I realize all I did on that conversation was complain. You know, it's very embarrassing. So, you know, and it doesn't feel good. It's not like a good place it leaves you in. So then you have to use some reasoning to kind of go, you know, that serves no purpose. And don't get, you know, you have to be gentle with yourself, kind to yourself. Nicole pointed out that Elaine likes to say when she's leading meditations, she's the resident teacher at Vajrapani, that we want to, when thoughts arise when we're meditating, we don't want to feed them. We don't want to get hooked by the storyline and keep going. We also don't need to strangle them, because that's feeding it in a different way. it's bringing your attention to it. It's like, one kind of hooks you and carries you away. The other one, you might not get carried anyway, but you're totally focused on your dislike of that habit or that thought. And that doesn't help either. It's more of just being able to just notice and let it go. Not do either. Not feed or starve it. Just let it go. Now, if you're meditating on a habit that thinks in a certain way, then you're investigating that habit. So you do want to look at the thoughts you have, but you don't want uncontrolled thoughts, just everything that's going on in your mind. You want to look at situations where these thoughts arise and start to examine it with your wisdom. Look where your expectations are. Look where your self-interest is. See if they're, remotely reasonable. See if you have thoughts that are just not true. Attachment and aversion, both of those habits or both of those states of mind are an exaggeration of the object. You're either exaggerating the goodness of it or you're exaggerating the badness of it. So you want to look at thoughts. If I was saying, oh, he's always going to be, they look at me, oh, she's always going to be complaining, then you have to think, well, is that really true? Is that the only thing this person does? And of course, it's not likely. Maybe it's the only thing this person does with you. So you just want to, not go to this spot that this person has nothing worthwhile. It's like our prejudices, our bias. When I was a teenager, I had a real bias against strong Southern accents. I just thought, really? I had the most ridiculous idea. I grew up in a city in the South, and most people didn't have a strong Southern accent in New Orleans. They were more likened to a Bronx accent. There were some recognizable Southern accents, but mostly not. But any place else in Louisiana had a strong Louisiana accent. And people in Texas had a different one, and people in Mississippi had a different one, and people in Georgia had a different one. So I had this ridiculous mind that thought, backwoods redneck or something, I could never learn anything from this person. It's ridiculous. So we want to be able to spot these triggers. I remember I spent the summer in France, and I had to do a language intensive. And for those 2 weeks, I was with a class of people from Georgia. And so all these kids spoke French with a strong Georgia accent. And it became so obvious to me because most of them spoke better French than I did. It did have a Georgia accent. But I had my accent, I certainly wasn't pronouncing it correctly, but it just became so obvious that I just had this view, and it was totally wrong, erroneous. It had no basis, and we just need to recognize when we're doing that to the people we're hanging out with, whether it's our family members, our friends, our coworkers. I mean, it can be anything. It can be you don't like their clothes. And we need to be aware of that because that's our self-interest. We're attached to people acting a certain way, speaking a certain way. And if they don't fit into that kind of box, we can be reactive to it. And it's not helpful. And it has no basis. It's not wisdom. It's purely from attachment or aversion. Mine was from aversion. And I'm sure a lot of it had to do with this fact that I couldn't understand what was being said. So I blame them. It's not my fault, not my ears. So we just want to really investigate. I mean, you might not have to worry about Southern accents, but we want to see these patterns of thought. And it's easiest to see them with people we see often, because we'll start to recognize that we have a certain conversation with them again and again and again, even if the words are different. Yes, Faye.
I have a question. So I thought like during meditation you couldn't, because it sounds like you're thinking during meditation, but I thought
Mhm.
writing thoughts. So
It's analytical meditation.
so you can think, like you can like ruminate and.
We're supposed to reflect. We need to become familiar with the teachings. We need to become familiar what our habits are. We need to use our wisdom to see if there's any, we can understand where we're being illogical or unreasonable, where we need to introduce wisdom. Yeah, I mean, that's, stabilizing meditation is what we do in order to discipline our mind. It's also, once we are able to have a focused mind, that allows us to penetrate any conclusions we make through analytical meditations more deeply. Helps us hold it. Have you ever read a good book and you start to tell someone about something in it that you just thought was so meaningful and you can't remember? That comes from lack of concentration. So we wanted to build the ability to stabilize our mind. That's very important. But we don't want to stabilize our mind just on anything. We're already good at that. If we're angry, we've got a very stable focus on the object of anger. If we're jealous, I don't miss that at all. There are some benefits to aging and being a nun. So, there are many benefits. Don't think those are the only two. So, but so we need to develop our stabilizing meditation, our ability to focus on what we choose to focus upon. But we also really need to develop our ability to investigate and analyze the teachings and our mind. We don't need to just get familiar with our mind just so we, know what our habits are. We want to go one more step. We want to go several more steps. But one of the next steps is looking at it and going, is that useful? Is it even true? Is it kind? You really want to look and then investigate ways to change it. And one way to change a habit that's really repetitive is to, sit with a situation where it tends to happen, where your mind just goes there, and picture the scenario, and then try to imagine doing something differently. Having an open mind, setting aside the negativity again and again and again. Not assume that everything's going to unfold the same way. Or even if it does, like our parents, we might want to just be able to say, well, I love these people. I wouldn't show up here if I didn't want to spend time with them. So the quality of the relationship may not be what I want, but I don't want to abandon it. So I'm going to accept it where it is and find ways to enjoy my time with these people I care about, but not on my own terms. We need to recognize if we're putting, conditions, if we have emotional contracts with people. I'll listen to you if. Those kinds of things. And that can happen only if we investigate, if we notice what our mind does and notice if we're always jumping to conclusions or we go in with a certain idea of what it's going to be like. And so it just plays itself out again and again and again. Is this making sense? All right. So I know it sounds like I'm just talking about having lots of conversations with yourself, and that's exactly right. I am. So what helps is when you want to reflect on something is to first calm your mind down with something like 9-round breathing. Because we want to step back from the situation and analyze it as if it's happening to someone else. So we can bring our wisdom to it without all our buttons being pressed. So we can recognize our self-interest, our expectations, our disappointments, being able to let go. Oh, this is not going to be the way I want. My mother died. I remember thinking, oh, I'm never going to have the relationship with my mother that I wanted to. It's not possible now. So you have to let it go. If I keep clinging to it, it's just going to cause me suffering. So it's a matter of just really, looking at the kinds of thoughts arise and checking out. Is this useful? But we need a little distance because our heart has been broken, because we are scared, we're vulnerable. But this is when we have to remind ourselves, okay, right now I'm sitting here quietly alone. I'm not in danger. I'm not with this person. And whatever's arisen in the mind, it's okay. Doesn't matter. It's just a state of mind. It's not who you are. It's just what's arisen. And your mind, will change. So much so that we think we can't meditate. Yep. Go ahead, Robert or Veronica.
Hi. I hear everything that you are saying. And last week we did a meditation about equanimity, and basically it was to make sure that we see everybody in the same light, not friends, enemies, or strangers. Everybody is the same. So there, during the meditation that we did, there was the introduction of this thought. Think about your friends. What if some of your friends will do something hurtful to you? And basically that was the meditation. But because that kind of subject is kind of sensitive for me, I couldn't step back. I started like feeling again, and I was a complete mess. So, but I continued trying to hold the meditation. And after that, I was talking to Robert, and I said, I think I failed. I failed because I couldn't keep it together, and I became a mess. So I'm not sure if at that time maybe I'm not ready to have that analysis or that type of meditation in that subject, or it's fine that I let it go. I don't know.
Okay, yeah, it's definitely fine.
Mm-hmm.
You did not fail. You cannot fail in getting familiar with your mind, except by not showing up and not looking, and then you're just not doing it. So it's not failure again, So anyway, when something strongly arises in your mind, and it's really wonderful when it does, because we really need to see what our wounds are, where our buttons are, but we can't do much with it when it arises. So when it arises, our job is just to pause, don't keep thinking, don't feed whatever arises with a story. Don't go back and reminisce, just experience that state of mind, the sadness or the fear or the anxiety or the worry, just whatever it is. You just sit with it, and it's not easy to do. It's very hard to do that without feeding it with a story. But that's part of the practice. That's something we do want to learn to do, because that's what's going to allow us in the moment when we're out in the world and something's happening. If we've practiced it and the button's not too deep, the wound's not too deep, we can go, oh, I'm hooked. I'm not going to say anything. I'm not going to do anything because I can't trust my speech or my body in this moment. And we pause. If we're with someone we're close to, we can even let them know, I'm sorry, I'm going to have to put this conversation on pause. You know, it stirred up something for me and I need to just allow that to rest. You know, if you can't say that because you're like at work, you know, you just nod your head like we often do. Yeah, whatever. So, but we don't, we just experience a feeling. And what we'll discover is that it often doesn't last long if we don't feed it. But that might be something that when you're not following a guided meditation and there are not other people around, you'll be able to reflect on. And what you may have to do is every time you get hooked by that strong feeling is just experience it and not follow the story. And then when it passes, you'll be aware of when it passes. And then you might have some, new understanding arise. And that's what we want to let our mind just focus on, that understanding, because that will remember it. It will go deeper. But we shouldn't be frightened of having strong emotions arise because we are trying to get familiar with our mind. Meditation is not just a pleasant experience, even though a lot of people use it for that. They use it to just, really what they're doing is learning how to relax. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just not the purpose of a spiritual meditation where we're trying to work with our hearts, our minds, to reduce our suffering. And so suffering's going to come up. It's just not the most, it's not fun, but it's what brings the biggest payoff, because then we can heal. Then we can come up with new strategies. Then we can recognize what part of the suffering are we creating with the way we think. That makes sense?
Yeah.
So definitely did not fail.
I told her.
Now you failed.
Yeah, that's okay.
Yeah, I told you so. Mine's never particularly desirable.
No, but she was saying that. Did I think I failed? I was like, no, you don't. You showed up. That's the main thing. I mean,
Yes,
I don't mind
and you
saying,
were
but-
right.
Okay.
It really is the main thing. We just accept what happens. We don't try to judge ourselves. That is not the point of meditation. Even if we determine that, oh, this habit energy of thought is not skillful, we don't look at ourselves and go, well, stupid, change it. That's not going to help. That's practicing another mind you're probably trying to abandon. And besides which, we develop some of these habits, we develop all of them out of our ignorance, thinking that we must protect this self at all cost. And we end up protecting ourselves from the very things that will, make our life more meaningful, like relationships and, vulnerability, keeping our hearts open, doing stuff that we're not particularly good at, but in order to help someone else. So, okay. Let me see what's here.
Venerable Tendron, I have a question about
Sure.
the breathing purification meditation. When it says choose a Buddha, say I choose the Compassion Buddha, is it okay to use His Holiness the Dalai Lama?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I think Tibetans do that. It's their natural go-to.
Yeah, I find the deities, sure, I know I should try those sometimes too, and I do, but I find I have a bit of a stronger connection with the holiness for that one.
Yeah.
So I just want to make sure that's okay. Thank you.
It's all okay. Yep. Well, it's not really, but we're going to go with that for now. So, all right. What was I going to do? I was going to do something. Okay. All these extraneous things show up. All right. You see the little heart? We really do, you know, heart and mind are the same word in Asian languages. And so we really do want to hold it gently. We are wounded. We're stuck in samsara, which is the nature of suffering. So we really want to do everything gently, not push too hard. You know, we want to give tools a try. You know, we want to give them a long enough try that we can find out if they work or not, but we don't want to push ourselves with harsh language. We don't want to judge what happens. There's no need for that. There's no need to compare ourselves to other people because mostly we can't read their minds. So what are we comparing? Oh, the way they look. Oh yes, I can look very subdued. You know, but that doesn't mean I am subdued. You know, so we, you know, judging, comparing, none of those things help. So when we review the steps for analytical meditation, you know, you pick an object. So the object might be my conversation with so-and-so. I want to, you know, that doesn't go well. And so I'm going to use that as my object to just see what happens. And you set an intention. So you want to set an, I'm doing this not to rehearse my anger with them or frustration or my impatience. I'm doing it because I want to try to figure out if there are other ways this could unfold. I want to see what thought patterns I have, what habits I have, and I just want to get familiar. Then you think about each point. You really try to get the whole scenario. And so now you're using an experience. So, you know, you don't have to relate each point to the experience. It's more like you have to, you know, understand the process. And then if something arises, some new understanding, you want to sit with that. That's when you apply your single pointed focus, however little it may be. So like if we were looking at the object interdependence, you know, we might want to look at how, you know, everything I own, everything I eat, everything I want exists because of other sentient beings. And it's not provided easily. The roads I drive on require hard work. The food I eat not only requires hard work today, but for centuries, people have saved seeds so that the next generations could eat. All that I know, everything I know how to do, someone taught it to me. And not only that, but everything I value exists because of the needs of sentient beings. All the love, compassion, generosity, patience, sacrifice, kindness, laughter, comfort exist because of others needing something from me. So understanding this, maybe it's true that sentient beings are the cause of enlightenment, even those difficult ones, or maybe especially those difficult ones. So they're wish-fulfilling jewels because they can give us an existence without suffering. So you'd have this set up, you know, you'd have a plan. And you would repeat this kind of reflection using reasons and examples to make this topic clear and convincing, meaningful to you. Not that you're just trying to talk yourself into it, You want to find what makes sense. And then you review it again and again. This is particularly necessary with our strong habits, to really look at, okay, if I have the strong habit of complaining, that I really need to look at all the ways that doesn't help whatever it is I'm complaining about. Look at all the ways that my complaints are an exaggeration, so they're not even true. You know, you really start to, and then look at the harm it does to whoever hears the complaining, including my own mind. And then when, you know, like I've said before, when some sort of understanding arises, I have to surrender to it. I have to go, oh, so. And then we just try to stay there for a moment. That making sense? Not that I can see you, because
Yes.
my screen. Thank you, Jack. Now, some other things that may come up when we're meditating. So these are the 3 things we're supposed to do when we're beginners. You know, you listen to the Dharma or read a book about the Dharma, you think about it and you meditate on it. Okay. So sometimes we might get the impression that the teachings are saying, you know, okay, being stuck in samsara, the cyclic existence, you know, it's terrible. So I'm just going to run away, go to the mountains and meditate. We all can become Tenzin Palmo and go, you know, meditate for 12 years. Or you might have this really wonderful experience, a strong feeling of love for all sentient beings. And then it goes away and we feel annoyed, just like we did before. And then we worry, oh no, I've lost the realization, whatever it was. This experience is not arising from our analysis. They're a form of belief or correct assumption. They are positive but unstable. And they arise due to the blessings of your teacher, the 3 rare sublime ones, or from good imprints from past lives. We should try to make them firm, develop the faith of conviction, you know, in renunciation, in cherishing others. But generally speaking, when we have this wave of something wonderful or some, you know, truth seems to arise, we need to understand that it's not likely that that will happen every time we meditate, or that somehow now we've gotten something. We've had a realization and our mind's permanently changed. You know, it just isn't like that. So you won't, you know, because if we grasp after it and think, oh, you know, now I've got it, we're going to be severely disappointed when it becomes clear that we don't have it. But we don't want to ignore it as if it's meaningless. So you really want to think about, when that happens, you want to kind of think about, okay, what was going on when this occurred, so that we can do it again. So we, you know, this is how we come up with our reasoning, because we've hit on something that resonates with us and we want to stabilize the wisdom. So we want to review, you know, the process of coming to this conclusion. When we have finally had an experience that is arising from our analysis, it will become stable. And we'll be able to, you know, our analysis includes our own experiences out in the world. That's how that's part of the investigative process. So it means that we're applying things or looking at things in a different way. It's like Robert saying, he's just aware of what his mind's doing all day long. That's the starting point, So, the more we reflect on these different assertions by the Buddha, we start to look at our own lives, look at our mind, look at, how we're thinking, see things from a different perspective. And so we want to see, part of what we're investigating is, are the teachings logical? Does it make sense? Does it make more sense than what my habit is? Because we're looking for what might be a more skillful, more beneficial way to think. Does that make sense? And this is the purpose of analytical meditation. We alternate. We go from analytical, we start with sort of a stabilizing meditation by just, first we're just trying to settle the mind down by either following the breath, doing 9-round breathing. And then we might try to just do, a stabilizing meditation on the breath. You can use the breath. You might want to use, the mind, just mere awareness. That's more difficult. But then we may want to turn our mind towards, a teaching, some situation or some habit of mind, whatever it is. We want to apply some analysis to it. And of course, in the beginning, that's really important. If we're not super familiar with the teachings yet, we want to become familiar with it. Because if we are left to our own devices, we stay in samsara. We just keep doing. This is why our habits are so powerful. We've been doing it, according to the teachings, forever. So if we want to consider a different method, we have to become familiar with the method, or we won't really make any changes that are lasting. Yes, Robert or Veronica?
This is interesting because, what if, the story is true, right? For like me, I would say like I have a PhD in regret, but I think of someone, which is an extreme case, but they actually, they left their child in a car and the child died, or one of those things in the news and all that stuff. And sometimes I see that person, I'm like, how do they deal with this? This is a long time later. So something like that is true. That's a true thing. And it's not like a story that happened. So I was wondering throughout this whole time.
The story isn't what happened. Okay. First, let's just make that clear. The story isn't what happened. The story is what we're telling ourselves when the experience arises. Okay, just,
Oh, yes.
Okay.
What if there is no story? What if it's, they lost a child?
Sorry, I distracted you. Go back to, okay, so say someone has something horrific that they experienced. So, okay, so where do we go from there?
Right.
Is that the
So
question?
this whole time I've been thinking that, but then you mentioned now the teaching. I guess the answer is somehow in the teaching. I wasn't thinking, I was thinking become familiar. So you say, wow, this person spends the whole time regretting on what they could have, their child's gone. Yeah. So that's a whole lifetime of regret. I guess that opens up a lot of questions, but it's true. It's not, it's true. Period.
It's the truth of suffering.
What's that?
Well, it's the truth of suffering. In this case, and it's a devastating level of suffering. Mm-hmm. Now, can someone move on from that? Probably not, in the sense of every time they think about it, they are going to be hit with regret. No doubt about it. No. Now, we can let our lives stop there, and never do anything useful again. Or we can use this fact that we can't go back and change the past to help us do something good now. You know, perhaps you become a motivational speaker to remind people to always check their car for their kids. You know,
Good karma? Is that why?
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
Is the purpose of it to like create good karma to like make up for the bad karma? Or
Well, right now we're talking about dealing with your mind now. Okay? Because you sort of can't even go, you know, it's more of like, is your life over because there's something you've done that caused the ultimate harm? You know, that's how we see it. You cause the death of someone. And not only just, you know, in our biased mind, not just anyone, but your own child. Now, if you were familiar with the teachings, of course, you know, eventually, and this is not advice for your friend, but for us, because this is not our experience, we can look at it going, okay, not only has he created some karma around this event, but the child had some karma to have this experience as well. That doesn't alleviate anything, you know, but it's another fact according to the teachings. We can look at, okay, I've done this action that resulted, you know, this careless action that resulted in a horrible ending. So what can I do to feel better? You know, what can I do to offer something to the world because I'm still here? I mean, one of the most amazing things to me about grief is that it doesn't kill you. You know, we have to, you know, you just keep going. Oh my goodness. You know, unless you actively do something to stop it, grief by itself doesn't kill you. So we have to figure out how to respond to this, the new reality we're in after a few years of nothing but grief. You know, we have to allow space for people to even come to grips with this new reality. But then that person might find some way to give their life meaning. We have examples of that all over the place. You know, the whole Amber Alert, missing children type thing started with a boy named Adam, you know. You turn, you know, it's just, it's, you know, so it's about understanding that even if our heart's broken, we can give to others. It does not take the place of, you know, we can't just trade off our regret for a positive feeling. That's not going to happen. And of course, you wouldn't want it to happen. That person would never want to forget that error in judgment, because you never want to do it again. So when, you know, regret is not the same as guilt, though. That person also doesn't need to feel like they are that event, that somehow they are the evil person who forgot their child in a hot car. Because no one is one moment. There are all the people in prison who are in prison because of, you know, a moment. All the people, all the soldiers who have memories of things in wars that they'd like to forget. I know one person who was a bomber pilot in Vietnam, so he killed lots of people. So he started making beautiful Buddha statues, you know, and dedicating it to, you know, all the people that he killed. But just a way to work with, you know, doing something that, you know, in that moment of doing it felt peaceful and uplifting. Because what, you know, if we allow our regrets to drive us into a place of non-action, who does that help? Does it harm anybody? So we don't want to forget that. It harms all the people around us. But if we can still bring ourselves, find that road to being able to still be able to help others. And we see it all the time. It is just one of those things that we see and we just think, wow, how wonderful that someone who's gone through such loss finds a way to help others because of it.
I think when you said that, first thing I think of Adam, whatever, the America's Most Wanted. I mean, that happened not far from here. I mean, that guy, that was horrific.
Yeah.
That was just right up the road, really, Hollywood. I mean,
It happens all over the world. It happens down the road for everybody.
yeah. But he took something
That's-
that was, yeah.
This is the truth of suffering. You know, if we look into the lives of people, most people have some story to tell. That's heartbreaking. They're not even, they're not equal, but it's just, you know, this is the truth of suffering. And so reflecting on the truth of suffering, understanding that dwelling on suffering, we don't need to, you know, go into despair. That's not the purpose, but understanding that samsara has this nature of suffering. No matter how good we have it, we lose everything we love. And it could be because we die first. And that's a fact. So wasting our time with unskillful habits really doesn't make sense. Because when you think about how much we grieve the loss of someone, think about all the time you wasted with them. This is another reason to look at our minds when we get up in the morning, so that we reduce the amount of time we waste in meaningless activity or mindless activity. This doesn't mean we don't have to do our jobs and go to the grocery store and clean the house and do the laundry. It just means that we can do it with a mind that says, I'm doing this to take care of my family, to take care of the, you know, this body that's so valuable because it helps me work on my mind, you know, all these different ways. There's a way to frame it so that we can think differently about what we just see as ordinary activities that fill our days. But if we bring our mindfulness to it, if we bring the meaning of it to us, if we can hold on to the fact that, oh, I have this job, I'm so grateful for this job. So many people don't have jobs. I'm so grateful to have this job because it allows me to eat. It allows me to provide for my family. It allows me to keep my body strong so that I can go help, you know, whatever. I mean, so there are, you know, we can, you know, and this is not just brainwashing ourselves to think that what we're doing is meaningful. It's making it meaningful. It's not meaningful if we just get up and plow through our day and don't really notice what's going on and we forget all about it. And then at the end of the day, we go, oh, gee, I was kind of short-tempered with so-and-so. That's too bad. You know, it's about actually making your life have meaning from moment to moment, not getting into some heavy guilt trip because it's not perfect. You know, it's just, you know, it's just trying to, you know, make, you know, this is your life. It's much nicer if at the end of the day you feel like, huh, you know, not so bad. I was helpful to others. I was loving to others. Is this making, am I just rambling now? Is this making sense?
No, it sounds like you're talking as if it's a continuous meditation, an attempt
It is.
to meditate all day long.
Yeah, it is. And because once it becomes the habit of mind, then when you look, when you check in your mind, it's not doing what it's doing now. You replaced some of these habits of just thinking about, I don't know, whatever it is you think about. I apparently complain a lot, so, it's, if we can replace that though, with thinking, how can I make this meaningful? How can I benefit the people around me? How can I be, bring a positive energy to the room instead of a negative energy or an indifferent energy, How can I be present to my life? And it's really amazing how just a few minutes in the morning, and then maybe check in again at lunchtime, and then check in again. I really encourage people to at least try to do this. Now, this is, we're in odd circumstances at the moment, but every time your activity changes in a major way, like when you wake up in the morning, and then when you're in the parking lot, getting ready to go into work, take a moment to remember why you go to work. Then when you're, meeting a friend for lunch, then when you're in the parking, in your driveway at home and you're getting ready to rejoin your family, to reset, and then before you go to sleep. This can radically change your experience of your day. And I know this from experience. It's just, it really makes a difference to take that pause and correct your motivation, or just remember this as a motivation. Because we're motivated by wanting to be happy. And what the teachings say is, well, the way to be happy is cherish others. And we're surrounded by others. So, this is an opportunity. Okay. You wake up, oh, I have another opportunity. I'm not, in the ocean, with fins, and, I'm still a human being. Yay. There are people around me I can help. Yay. There are people around who'll help me if I need it. Yay. This is, it's a way to shift. This is the last How to Meditate class. Hopefully not the last time you think about meditating.
Venerable Tendron?
Yes.
I know you just said this is the last meditation class, but it's fitting, and we're very fortunate to have Nicole lead us in meditations, during the week, starting tomorrow.
I didn't know about that, so,
9 o'clock every morning except the weekends.
I just kind of reached out to a few friends and family, for a 10-minute meditation, and
she's not committing to doing it for the world.
Yeah, it's not really for the center, but I thought a few people that are beginners and might be interested. If anyone's interested, let me know. It's only a little 10-minute, like a little jump start.
It's really a good idea, I lived in a nuns community, so trust me, I didn't have a choice, so we had to do Guru Puja every day. We had all sorts of things every day, so, and it was really wonderful. This is one of those things that, being a nun, it's easier, if you're living in community, because having others of like-minded, it encourages us, and we do it for each other. You don't feel like going, but if you don't go, then eventually, nobody will go, and da 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 da, and then everybody misses out. So instead of being selfish, you go, oh, well, I'm going to show up. So it's a really good thing to do. So I encourage you to do it with others if you have that opportunity. You know, and eventually you won't need to unless you're doing it for someone else, because you'll have the habit. You know, and hopefully you'll see some benefit to your life where you really notice when you don't do it. You know, you'll be examining something, you go, oh, that's right, I didn't sit today. You know, and you see a change, a shift, because the mind, getting your mind in the right place for the day really helps. You know. All right.
So just as a commercial, though, we will still have Thursday Discovering Buddhism classes. Just next week, we're starting death and rebirth. So another light topic for us.
Well, it's a good, yes, and it's a good motivator to meditate because it's a reminder that we do, in fact, have limited time. Even though our mind doesn't cease at the time of death, this attached, the person we're attached to in this life, that ceases. It never existed, but it ceases. So, but, you know, and there will be meditations, and there's some really good meditations for thinking about death. And we don't do it in order to feel terrible, you know, it's about using our life well, making our days more meaningful. And then when it becomes our turn, which we never know really when that's going to be, you know, it helps us have a habit of not being fearful or grasping, you know, things, the conditions that are not so good for the time of death, make it more unpleasant. Okay, I have a meditation somewhere. Okay, so this is kind of a lengthy meditation. We'll see how it goes. You know, all of a sudden everybody unmutes going, I'll stop. Anyway, so, okay. So any last minute questions? Good. Oh, go ahead, Robert.
So actually, both of us, and we know you addressed it before, but we forget, both of us, the difference between guilt and regret, if that's too long.
Regret is an active, you know, taking responsibility from something you did or thought or said that causes harm to yourself or others, and really making the determination to do something about it, to change that behavior, make an apology, try not to do it again. Guilt is where you think, I am this mistake, this error, this, you know, and there's nothing you can do about that. If you are this, you know, and that's just guilt. That's carrying around a suitcase of all the mistakes you've ever made. And it serves no purpose. You know, it can actually paralyze us from wanting to change because we're convinced that we can't change. And that's where the teachings on impermanence are so important. Does that help?
Yeah, you're really amazing. This is great. Really, thank you so much.
The teachings are really amazing. They are gold.
Well,
If you
you're a
had
conduit.
known me when, you know.
You're a conduit to the teachings, right? So yeah,
This is a hope.
appreciate you.
Thank you, Robert. So, okay. So now try to, again, you know, kind of go within, find your breath, try to be alert. Keep your chest open, relaxed posture, but upright, dignified, the willingness to be aware. And just find that sensation of the breath. going in and out of the body. Just rest your mind on that sensation. During the meditation, if you notice that your body is getting tense, bring your attention back to the breath, allowing it to ease the tension. So bring to mind a positive reason for doing meditation. Think that you wish that this meditation will be beneficial for yourself and others, that it will help to bring about a greater peace and happiness, as well as more positive thoughts and feelings. Positive meaning that they're useful, skillful. They'll reduce your suffering in the future. So just as being stuck in cyclic existence is dependent upon our past negative actions of body, speech, and mind, liberation from samsara, from cyclic existence, achieving enlightenment is dependent on causes and conditions. They are dependent upon gathering merit from our positive actions and the accumulation of wisdom from the direct realization of how things exist. Liberation is dependent upon these causes and conditions. Buddhahood is dependent upon these causes and conditions. All things that exist are dependent. They're dependent on language and conception. Liberation is dependent upon the idea of a state free of suffering and the name liberation imputed on that state. The existence of the person depends upon the conception of a basis for the person and depends upon the name person imputed onto that basis, a body and mind. Seeing that the person is neither exclusively the body, nor is it exclusively the mind, one can understand that the person is not the basis of imputation. It's just a label imputed on that basis, a body and a mind. The conception of a particular body and mind as a basis gives rise to the imputation of a name, I or you, depending on which body and mind the label is dependent upon. The body and the mind are also labels arising from language and conception, imputed on all the parts of the body, the mind. And the parts also have labels arising from language and conception, imputed on all of the parts and all the parts of the parts. It's not that the I naturally exists on my body and mind. It exists due to the countless causes and conditions that came together for this body and mind to be produced in each moment, and due to convention. This body and mind is the basis of imputation related to the label I. There is no moment of this continuum of body and mind that can be said to be I. It is merely a label imputed by convention on all the causes and conditions producing that moment in the continuum of a body and mind. This includes all the actions of all those thousands of strangers, never static, never isolated, never independent. When one gains a very firm and clear understanding of dependent arising and its import, then one comes to understand that the judgments we make of things as being good or bad, delicious or not delicious, friend, enemy, loved one or stranger, happiness, sadness, pain or pleasure, all of these are mere labels imputed upon phenomena that arise in dependence on countless causes and conditions. Subduing one's own mind is the teaching of the Buddha. It becomes a cause for happiness. Understanding impermanence can help us change the habit of clinging to things as though they were permanent. Whatever is beautiful and pleasing will change and eventually disappear. So we can't expect it to give us lasting happiness. But we can learn to enjoy and let go. Whatever is unpleasant or disturbing won't last forever. We can learn to tolerate the discomfort, knowing that there's no point to being upset about it, and looking to see if it's an opportunity to practice our good qualities like generosity or patience, kindness, compassion, and wisdom. In each second, we can choose the cause for happiness in this and all future lives. What is that cause? Positive actions. In each second, we have the freedom and opportunity to choose to expand our skillful habits, to abandon our unskillful habits, to create the cause to end our suffering. All phenomena, I, action, object, enemy, friend, stranger, all our possessions, so forth, are changing within every second by cause and conditions. And because of that, the phenomena that arise can be changed depending on the causes and conditions we bring together. If feelings are pleasant, we enjoy them mindfully without clinging. If feelings are unpleasant, we experience them mindfully without rejecting. In this way, no longer do feelings condition desire. Instead, there is mindfulness, letting go. When there is no desire, there's no grasping. Without grasping, there's no link of becoming. If we are not generating that energy, there's no rebirth, no disease, no old age, no death. Every moment of awareness can be a hammer strike on the chain of conditioning. Striking it with the force of wisdom and awareness, the chain gets weaker and weaker until it breaks. We cultivate the effort, the mindfulness, the skills to cherish others. We become free of samsara, no longer driven on by ignorance and self-centered desire. The whole of suffering is brought to an end. In order to eliminate the cause of unpleasant feelings of suffering, the Buddha advised, do not commit any unwholesome action and only engage in perfect wholesome action. Why did he advise us in this way? Not to torture ourselves, not to feel trapped under his rules, not like that. It's a means of freeing us from the problems of life and to achieve happiness, both temporary happiness and ultimate lasting happiness. To be free from what is undesirable, to be free from what one doesn't like, to be free from those things and to have only happiness, peace, desirable things. For that success, to achieve temporary happiness and especially ultimate happiness for that purpose alone. Freeing ourselves from suffering is dependently related to abandoning negative actions. Our positive actions, our refraining from negative actions are dependent upon other living beings, dependent upon all the people who taught us what is positive, helpful, kind action, compassionate action, generous action, patient action, dependent upon all the beings who have needed our help, our patience, loving kindness, compassion, and wisdom. Our wisdom is dependent upon all the teachers who patiently shared their knowledge and all the time and effort we have used developing our compassion and wisdom through listening, contemplating, meditating, and implementing the teachings. Now, with this attitude of appreciation, of loving kindness and compassion towards other sentient beings, with the thought to benefit other sentient beings, the aspiration to free all sentient beings from all their sufferings and lead them to lasting happiness, by knowing how to make life meaningful, by knowing that happiness depends upon cherishing others, the thought to do service, to fulfill, to do these works for other sentient beings, this thought gives meaning to our lives. Living our lives with this thought, by knowing the purpose of life, to live one's own life for other sentient beings. Take a moment to rejoice in your efforts. And dedicate any positive results from these efforts in listening, reflecting, dedicating them to the great ocean of merit making the wish that it not exhaust until there's no suffering sentient beings left in samsara. Now just bring your attention gently outward. Being aware of others' presence. So what do you think? How many thoughts? How's your mind? So meditating is just thinking, reflecting, but it's purposeful thinking. It's directed thinking. You choose an object. You choose some material to work with. And you think about it. And you give yourself some space. You know, you only take parts of things and reflect on it. So you have some space to see if anything bubbles up in your experience. It's very hard to guide others to an experience until they've had some experience. But it's because, you know, it's really important to take something that either resonates with you or something that you kind of go, I don't know about that, you know, and take some time to really think about it. And then as you become more familiar with different topics, say you have some belief, like I have this, you know, I'm kind of convinced about impermanence. And then I want to think about the ways in which I cling to things being permanent and how that's not skillful because it's a lie. You know, doesn't actually help me. It builds, you know, clinging to things being permanent builds expectations for things not changing. But, it, you know, wishing does not make it so. So write yourself some scripts. And the, you know, those of you who are beginners, you know, listen to the audio files of guided meditations. Create your own when you have some experience, or if it's just something. And like I said, you know, reflecting on different scenarios that just can help you bring more awareness to what goes on with you in those scenarios so that you can start to work with them, work with the habits of mind. So next week we start death and rebirth. So it seems really timely with the global situation. So anyway, no last minute questions or anything, complaints. You can write those and send them to Rebecca and Nicole. And they'll gently tell me. I'm kidding. So, all right.
It was a wonderful class, Venerable Tendron. Thank you.
That's good. No worries. All right. So we want to dedicate. You know, it's really important to get in the habit of feeling good about your efforts, no matter what happens. You know, if you show up, you know, feel good about that. That's, you know, this is how we start. It's not about results, it's about process. And it's about understanding that, you know, in each moment, you know, we might do the same thing, but with awareness, there might be a moment where we go, nah, not this time. Going to do something different this time. So it's good news. All right. So we'll read some dedications. All right. Because of all the merits of the 3 times created by me and all the Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, and other sentient beings, may there be no wars, famine, disease, quarreling, fighting, or unhappy minds. May there be great prosperity, and may everything needed be easily obtained. May all the human beings in the world be guided by spiritual leaders teaching only Dharma, and may everyone enjoy the happiness of Dharma. Of course, Dharma just means, you know, the truth that leads to no suffering, you know, so it's not just Buddhist. May everyone have perfect conditions and have only compassion and love for each other in their mind streams, and may they only benefit and never harm each other. We will do that too. May all human and non-human beings who eliminate adversity and create conducive conditions for practicing the excellent paths never be parted in any of their lives from the purest path praised by the Buddhas. Whenever someone makes effort to act in accordance with the tenfold Mahayana virtuous practice, may he always be assisted by the mighty ones, and may oceans of prosperity spread everywhere. These are hints about what kinds of topics are to come. May my Venerable Lama's life be firm, his pure divine actions spread in the 10 directions, and may the torch of Loson's teachings dispelling the darkness of the 3 worlds beings always remain. And may all beings everywhere, plagued by sufferings of body and mind, obtain an ocean of happiness and joy by virtue of our merits.